Kia ora, I'm Harv, Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Now, my hoki mai. Today I am talking with Keith Mason. Keith is a intriguing fella. He's into quantum physics. He's into energy. He's calls himself the Purple Guy. He is a very interesting guy with a wide range of knowledge and interest. Has helped a huge number of people with coaching and mentoring. And he happened to be in the area, so I nabbed him over the weekend. And I am intrigued to see where we get to with this conversation. He is always fascinating and has a huge range of skills. So welcome to what I am guessing is going to be a very interesting and wide-ranging conversation. Enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. I am talking to Keith Mason this afternoon in sunny Fielding. Good afternoon, Keith.
Good afternoon, Harv. Great to be here.
I wasn't planning this day, so it's field days time. I came to the field days this morning. I dropped in to see Keith, who happened to be visiting Fielding. Keith cruises around the country in his purple bus. He's the Purple Guy, and Keith has been a great mate, mentor, coach for me. We were catching up this morning for just a casual coffee before the field days. And as we want to do, we sat down and started chewing the fat. And I said, mate, we've got to get this down and get it recorded. So, Keith, thank you for fitting me in this Saturday afternoon.
Pleasure, Harv. Pleasure.
And Keith has been a huge support for me. And how long have we known each other, Keith?
Oh, it would have to be 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
now.
it's more than that.
Is it?
It's more than that.
Oh,
And-
it's been 2 years.
Yeah,
it'd be
and
close to-
and you know, Keith, it's interesting. I was introduced to you by Pascal and Simon Carthew a long time ago. I've known about you for, I reckon, 15 years. And when I was introduced to you, I didn't want anything to do with you. I was like, I tried everything to dislike you and keep you at bay. That was classic, and it was yeah, and you didn't, and it was all my stuff coming up and just going, who's this fucker? I don't want to listen to this shit. I don't want to, and yeah, you got under my skin, brother.
Hey,
And it's been a wicked journey since then. So thank you for helping me. Okay, so what happened? I'm just going to frame up this morning the conversation we had, so people get some context. I was talking to Keith this morning about what I'm seeing in the world, and that's why it was so important to get this down today. What I'm seeing in the world at the moment, Keith, is this huge disruption that's happened post-COVID, and we've got climate change, we've got biodiversity, we've got all sorts of stuff coming at us. And I'm seeing people's nervous systems really stretched at the moment. And it has been really interesting for me just to watch that, seeing the impact of our members, seeing the impact of people coming in to Collective Intelligence, and seeing how it's affected males. I believe it's affected men more than women. So that's where the conversation took up this morning. And so we'll get back to that, but that's the context of today's conversation. And how would you frame it up, Keith? Navigating
navigating and changing times,
Yep.
or finding your feet in chaos.
There we go.
It's everyone's had basically their reference points shifted and moved, and for most of us, we don't really pay any attention to that. We kind of go down a track where we're outcome focused, especially us men. And, we to a degree want to do the same thing over and over and get good at it. So we have better outcomes and we achieve and we're successful and all those wonderful things. And that's okay when you're following a set path, or if you're following what's right, or if you're following what's accepted. But that's all just turned us up now. And so what do you reference? Who are you? So we're moving into what I call today a three-dimensional way of living. We've always lived in a third dimension, but we've thought and behaved from a second-dimensional reality. Right, wrong, good, bad, male, female, government, non-government, successful, not successful. It's all black and white with different labels. And how do you have two-dimensional thinking in a three-dimensional world?
So that is the basis of our coffee this morning, which is just classic. I've just never sat down with Keith and talked about the weather.
We don't do weather.
We don't do the weather. And that'll give you a wee glimpse into why I love working with Keith, because whenever I sit down, he challenges everything I think about. And I don't think I've ever left a conversation with you, Keith, or a coaching session with you not feeling clearer, more grounded, and more able to carry on. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
We're going to touch on metaphysics.
We can touch on metaphysics.
And so before we get into that, Keith, who the fuck are you?
Okay. Simply put, I'm a product of my environment. My father was an engineer. I grew up in a family of 5 sisters, 4 of them the same age. So, I'm world famous in New Zealand, in our world anyway. So we had quads. And so my childhood was kind of shaped a bit by that. My dad was an engineer and stuffed his body very quickly. So I didn't want to, I was practically orientated, but I didn't want to have a career in physical work because I saw what it did to him. So I was torn between this wanting to use my mind to create my living and wanting to play with cars and work out how things come together. So I'm really lucky that I've managed to bring them together. So now I don't work out how cars work, I work out how people work, and I help them work out how they work. And so that's kind of fun. But it was a bit of a journey getting there. I spent some time as a property valuer. I've got some qualifications, worked for the government, worked for New Zealand Motor Corporation. I ran shopping centres and things like that. Ran $600 million worth of property for AMP. So I kind of had this whole corporate thing. Then I went into furniture, commercial furniture, and set up my own operation. I changed the government around the health and safety, around computer desking and things like that. And then I sold the product into it. So I kind of have a very varied and diverse arrangement. And basically I was running my own business, had a company, quite successful, several companies actually. And one day the world stopped. And a whole series of synchronicities, some people call it a spiritual path, and some people say, haven't, but a whole lot of things just happened. And suddenly I found myself volunteering on a youth course on self-empowering youth. And it was like, how am I here? I didn't even take off much time for the birth of my children. And suddenly, in the space of one day, I've taken 10, 12 days off. My staff were gobsmacked. I was gobsmacked. And I was pretty well locked into that lineal success, drive, money. I shouldn't say it in a podcast, because it would be recorded, but I drove in to a school in Martin where they were holding this course. And I drove in my Porsche and I evaluated my standing by all the other cars in the car park. Now, how stupid is
So you're an egotistical twat.
A nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
Somewhat self-opinionated.
Yep.
Somewhat focused on what I perceived reality to be, and measured the world by what I found important.
Right.
Like most people.
I was going to say that sounds pretty normal, Keith.
Yeah,
Not to everybody, but to lots of people. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I ended up on this American type course, and the self stuff that came up when I'm running around in a group of other adults that I've met singing and chanting, celebration, celebration, that American rah-rah song. So a huge introduction to myself in a different environment that I couldn't regulate myself in. And I suddenly realised how much I regulated myself.
Right. And so that led you on a totally different journey.
Total, mate. Total.
Did you like yourself back then?
Never stopped to think about it.
Right.
I don't think many people do. I was more interested in the next deal, the finishing the job we had, getting the next job, the next successful corporate lunch, the next board I might get on. It was all those sort of things. Did I really think about myself as a person? And not really.
Okay. Would have I liked you then?
Ooh, probably not. Probably not, because I wouldn't have had any time for you.
Good to know.
If, back then, if there wasn't anything in the conversation for me, I wasn't interested in having it.
That's fascinating, Keith, because I still come across those people. I came across one recently.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I haven't dealt with one for a while.
Yeah.
And it was quite evident that he was sizing me up to see what was in it for him in the conversation. I had one of my team there on a training thing as well. And we were just sitting there going, oh my God, what is this? And he was literally it was like sounding depth gauges to see how much commercial opportunity there was in dealing with us.
Absolutely.
And it was pretty yucky.
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a big here, because I tend to do. When anyone thinks they have the answer, it's icky.
Yeah.
Because they only have their answer.
Yep.
And they only have the answer that they've intuited, worked out, fabricated, told themselves a story, learned from a wounding or a bad experience. That's their reality. And no one else's, or it's definitely a conflicting one, doesn't sit well. Which is why you didn't like me when I first met you, you see.
No, I didn't say I didn't like you. I just resisted you as much as possible because I'd heard so many good things about you through Pascal and Simon. I was just like, no, I can't be that. Nah, it was all sorts of stuff going on.
We all, me included, think we're open to change. We're not. We're open to external validation. That's what we all want. We want to be seen, heard, and valued. And that if someone doesn't fit in our camp and doesn't offer it, they're a threat.
Yeah. Maybe it was a threat. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was fun.
So Keith, we could go into your journey of discovery to now. I actually don't want to do that. Can we, because I'm selfishly want to talk about what's going on today as well, because I think that's really valuable for people to hear your views. I got so much out of the conversation this morning and almost shut you down and said, let's get this on record. So from that period of the corporate world, or from the some change happening, you've gone on this journey of discovery?
Yeah, I basically became aware of the world of energy.
Yep.
That's the best way I can describe it. So what's the difference between some person you like and somebody you doesn't? Well, how can you feel the energy in a room when you walk it? What is that? And if you want to go further, it's what's love? Because love's a feeling, but you try and define it.
Yep.
No, so it was wow. So I went all around the world's energy spots, so to speak, you know, Mount Sinai and the Inca Trail and the North American Indians and the Hopi. I went all around that, seeking to feel into the differences in what was happening. At the same time, and it happened on that course when I drove in with my Porsche, I had the opportunity to sit in what some people would call absolute stillness, Zen, quantum field, whatever you want to call it. And in that place, this is the touching on the metaphysics, in that place, everything is so still. And when everything is so still, you become aware of any movement. And you become aware of, is that my movement? Did I have a thought or feeling? Or did something move me? Was that an external thought and feeling? And so suddenly you become sensitive to the movement to the experience of your experience, not what's happening, but what you're sensing. And so I sat in this quantum field for years, on and off, and felt people's energy, so I could feel what was happening underneath what they were saying and what they were presenting to me. I could feel the room, I could feel nature, I could feel how consciousness shifted. I could tell what was happening with someone when they sent me a text, not by the words in the text, but by the energy that came with the text. And so it introduced me to a different world. That's the metaphysical world, the world of subtle energy.
Was that, I don't know how to ask this question, but here goes, was that difficult to integrate into your life?
Oh, incredible. I sold everything, went and bought a hunk of land, sat on a retreat centre, meditated. And there were so many beautiful things, that showed me is every time I made a commitment to this voice in my head, which told me it was crazy. I thought I was crazy, but I started to follow
You're a little bit crazy, Keith.
Just a little bit, mate.
Yeah.
But because I'm a engineering-orientated guy, my crazy was always proof-based. So I'm meditating and I'm going, why am I feeling this way? And I get this. And I go, well, if this is, what happens next? And so a simple one, and I'll give it to everyone, is that I loved wine. I was a great wine drinker. I had a wine cellar. I loved it red. I'd always have a bottle, half a bottle, sometimes a bottle a night. I was thoroughly enjoying it. And after I started meditating and becoming aware of myself through this process, I realized that the first mouthful or the second mouthful of the wine, my face flushed. And it was, I never noticed it, but my friends were saying, what's happened? Your face, I go, oh, it goes away. Third glass, it's gone. All right. In a meditation, I asked, what was that about? All right. And there was this like a giggle. And I don't want to get into, was it a spirit? Was it me? It doesn't matter. There was this giggle, and this was the reply. Alcohol's a poison to your system. I went, oh, okay. And so when you choose to put it into your system, your body goes into handling it. It tries to isolate systems. It tries to regulate it. It does everything. It processes it. Well, you asked that you wanted to be healthy, so we're showing you that every time you put what poison into your body, we're showing you in your face the heat and the thing. We're showing you the blooming of the energy in your system to handle the alcohol. Well, why does it go away after the third drink? Well, you're obviously not listening, are you?
Right.
You haven't changed your behaviour, so there's no sense showing you. We now have to cope with it. And that was a really powerful moment for me because I sold my wine cellar.
Right.
Because there was just a growth there. And there's a big difference for me between self-growth, awareness, self-growth, and personal development. Personal development is slightly more skills for corporate, and I'm developing a person, it's external. Self-awareness and self-growth is understanding who I am inside. And that was the start of that process for me. And so, my partner at the time got a new job. In this meditation, I asked, what does she see from the desk of her new job? I got shown a picture, I wrote it down. How does she go to the toilet? I got a picture of an alleyway and the toilet. And the process, as I developed, they said, we're going to be quite accurate with you for a while because you won't listen to us unless you have proof.
Right. As an engineer.
As an engineer. So I had a proof. So I wrote it all down. She went for her first day. She came home and I was about 90% right of the toilet and what she got and where the clock was. And so that started my journey of interactive with the metaphysical world, to see if in that absolute stillness whether I could access a subtlety of awareness, a subtlety of information. And I don't want to talk about whether it was a guide or a person or a being, or was it my intuition or my gut. I can go into that in great detail, but I won't tonight. But that was the start of it. And it showed me that the world we live is a world that's consumed by external demands. And as long as we play that game, we never look inwards. Nobody ever looks inwards while life's going good.
Keith, it's interesting, the experience. We used to meet regularly for coaching and mentoring, and the number of times you would text me when I was not happy or something was going on, and I'd get this text from you going, "What's up?" And it was in the end, it never surprised me, because if I was having not necessarily a bad day, but there was a sequence of things, and I going, bing, here comes the text, "What's up? You want to talk?" It was classic, and I just it stopped surprising me.
Well, I think this is part of the reason why I like talking about this now, and the world's becoming more aware of energy and metaphysics. But let's take it back to an area that you're really interested in. You would tell anybody that your paddock health, your grass health, thus your animal health, is based more on the microbes in the soil than the grass. Correct?
Correct.
I would say that your human experience of life is based more on the emotional awareness that you have and the thought process that you have and the stories that you tell yourself than anything else. Your reality is shaped internally. And then we go out and we try and make the world look like we're internalizing it. And therefore we take whatever's inside outside, and here's the tricky part. We flip it. If I need validation, for example, on a topic or a thing, when I go out with it, 9 times out of 10 I'm going to push it because I want validation. Now, when I'm really successful at it and I've got it inside and I'm just doing my own thing on my own paddock and people are coming by because my grass is growing and thing, and they ask, I don't have to push it. Now, you know and I know that if someone pushes something at you, what's your automatic response?
Is to pull back.
Is to pull back or block. And this is the subtle energetic process, because we don't know if we're pushing. Because we don't want to know half. And I think this is the key part. Our internal landscape, our mind, our consciousness tries to protect our. So we don't want to know. And so there's a part in this personal development, self-awareness, self-growth market that says all the answers are within. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. However, you'll never ask the right question to get them, because you're the one blocking them. So you'll only ask the right question when chaos happens. You'll never ask the right question, and even then you often won't. So this is why you need external people who don't have your story, don't have your view. They look at it from a different perspective. And so they don't know what you're going on. They just look at it and say, this is what you're telling me. By your energy, by your languaging, by your behaviour, by your response. And that's self-awareness. So when you start to recognise that in yourself, the most important part is, what is my state? If my state is still, I'm in balance. If my state is down or backward, then I've got a story running. If my state is forward and out, then I have a story running. Look at my story.
What you've just described is some of the work we do at Collective Intelligence and some of our challenge we have at Collective Intelligence. And the number of times we see members who receive wonderful information from their teammates and they don't know what to do with it. And and conversely, we see people, and I'm thinking of a wonderful woman from the South Island, got some extremely, not confronting, but really, really chunky information. And just to watch her integrate that into her body, she had all the skills, she was just, all the pores were open. And it was just watching this thing of great beauty. And I just watched her absorb all this information, didn't get triggered, and then over the next 3 or 4 months was able to put things into action calmly, with wisdom. And we talk about making sense of complexity, is a lot of what we do with Collective Intelligence. But the thing that we see people struggling with is the ability to belong.
Oh, you've got my favourite topic.
Right. So and disagree with me, or please. And it's a real frustration, Keith. It's a real frustration because I'm seeing it right now with a I was going to say a young man, a guy in his mid-career, and he's just had his ass kicked, and he's looking to leave his team. He hasn't had his ass kicked, but he's had his ass kicked at work, and he's going to leave the team. And I said, now's the time to stay. Now's the time just to keep the pores open, to learn, and I'm not sure what he's going to do. I suspect he's going to leave, and it's just going, you've run into some chaos here, and there's information everywhere here.
Yep.
And you're still loved, and there's no judgment around this, apart from maybe the judgment he's creating and the story he's creating himself at the moment. Don't know.
Harvard, I love the fact that you make simplicity out of complexity. If I was in his shoes and a team of people came in who had a wealth of experience, how they delivered it would depend a lot on how I could receive it.
Yep, 100%.
All right? Now, that's the challenge. All right? Because if they believe they're right, then they want to be validated.
Okay, my pushback here is with the Collective Intelligence team right now actually don't know what he's been through. So he's had major issues at work.
Yes.
And I think because of shame, he's sent me a message and saying, I'm going to leave the team, right? I'm leaving the team. And I'm saying, bro, this is a time to stay with the team. This is the time for them to help you.
But I hear you, Harv, and so it's not a pushback or a thing, it's an expansion for me. And the expansion is when I need to belong, I have a need. Start there. When I need to belong, I have a need. Therefore, am I resourced? All right? I'm not resourced.
No.
So the issue is this person resourced as self? Does he or she, do they identify as the manager? Do they identify as the leader? Do they identify as the expert? If their identification is an external, and we're seeing it at the moment, the world is wanting to be in community, and the world's incapable of being in community because they're not resourced. They're going to community full of needs. They're going to community full of uncertainty and vulnerability, which is a good thing, but they may not see it that way. And so it triggers them. So this need to belong is actually an indication of a lack of self-growth and self-awareness. The need to belong. because there is a total difference. Then I have a sense of belonging with myself. I belong in this world. I have some strengths and some weaknesses. I have some experiences. I have some bits which I'm really powerful in and some that I'm really vulnerable in. I love parts of my masculinity and I don't like the other. Nobody talks like this because nobody has these conversations. You know, they're more, I'm the boss, I'm a plumber, I'm a coach, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's all in an external label that they're placing out into the world. And you take that label away and they have no idea who they are because they've never really paused and found that stillness, found that peace inside themselves to really understand what motivates them. Because they're too busy responding to the demands of their bosses, their business, their clients. And so that's what's happening with the world. And that's where we're talking about how to navigate.
And that's you know, when I was talking this morning, that's my challenge at the moment, because I said at the moment, I feel as though I'm reacting to the world more than I normally do. You know, we talked about that I feel like this cork in the ocean bobbing around at the moment.
Yes.
And it's frustrating me because my mood is often determined by what's happening out there rather than my inner peace determining how I'm feeling.
Yeah. So my question would be, can you control what's out there? No.
Of course I can, Keith.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely. So you're God. You're the
Yeah,
master.
I
You're the
can do
supreme
that.
being.
Yeah, and so, of course, the answer is no, I can't.
All right. But you do have the ability, especially if you practice it, to master your energy.
Yep.
You do have the ability to go, take a breath. You do have ability to create avoidance techniques by fact, not hiding, but by choice, to go, right, I need to change my state. I need to avoid this situation until I get into a better thing.
Why do I keep forgetting to do that?
Because you don't value it. And that comes back to your comment about self-love. If I gave you $1 million for every aha moment you had about your own energy, and you made $27 million before you got out of bed in the morning, well, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. You'd make another $27 million on the way to the toilet. And then you'd make another $27 million, and you'd just keep going because it was the most powerful, the most critical, the most opportunity that you had to change and shift, expand and develop your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the natural world, with your partner, with your children, with the world in general. You would be able to go, wow, I've added blah energy here and it's made it worse. I've pulled my energy out and I've added love energy and it's made it better. Wow, I can do all that without even speaking. Now, when that becomes valuable, then the world will transform. And that's where we're heading, because we live in a 3D world and we think in duality. And so now we're moving into the 3D reality. But to have that, you have to have yourself.
Okay.
Sorry,
no.
I get into I'm passionate about this stuff.
No, Keith, this is exactly why we're here today.
Okay. Yeah.
This is exactly why we're here. So let's look at this, and let's go back to the duality in a 3D world. Tell us what that is.
Okay. The best way I can describe it is, if I was talking to you as a business coach, you would ask me this question: where are you and where do you want to go? So automatically I've asked you to define where you are, not who you are, but where you are. And then I've asked you to define where you want to go. So you're on a journey, but that journey is outside of yourself. Now, on the way, you're going to learn about yourself, but that's not your focus. Your focus is increased sales, better business, external. So you're in a line. You're in a straight line. Now, that's duality. We call it logic, but it's also duality. It's from here to there. The other version of that duality is right. If there is a right, If you can say to me that's right, I know that within the next 10 minutes you're going to tell me something's wrong. I know it. I just have to wait to see what you're going to tell me.
Right.
Because you've got a seesaw, and on your seesaw you have right. Well, to balance that, you'll have wrongs. If you love females, you'll have judgments on males. If you're a female and you have a judgment on a male and then you want to marry one,
That's a bit tricky.
wouldn't you want to know what your judgments are on males? Or do you just accept that's how girls think and boys think differently? And suddenly we've got Venus and Mars and all those other perversions of straight line thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rationaling of you're at the other end of the seesaw. Now, if you've got a lot of money, I put you at the top of my seesaw. If you've lost your marriage while you've got a lot of money, I put you at the bottom of the seesaw. Oh, hang on, if you've got a lovely marriage and you've got no money because you put the family first, well, then I put you as a no-hoper. All depends on where I sit on my line, and all depends on where I place you. Now, that goes into government, that goes into police, it goes into traffic. You know, if you get pulled up by a cop for speeding, do you know you're speeding? You have to. And even if you didn't, if it was an accident, you were looking out, you were talking on the phone, you were not paying attention, you know you have a responsibility to maintain a speed. So do you thank the officer? Do you say, thank you for doing your job because I pay your wages, I pay you to police these, I may not agree with these, the speed limit might be wrong for me and my driving level, in my opinion, from my perspective, but the community that I'm trying to join, so you have a need to be in community. The community I'm trying to join has decided now that it's 30k and you're used to 50k. And I've got an attitude about that. So I take it out on the policeman, who takes it out on his wife or his children when he goes home, or the guy putting gas in the car, or his superior. So this is the transfer of energy in the seesaw when you've got a straight line and different weights. Can you see this picture?
Yep, I can. I also want to draw out the analogy you gave me this morning about the box. I love that analogy.
Okay, this is where we're going to. Consciousness, humans' ability to self-grow, self-regulate, self-measure, self-develop. We are moving from this duality thinking, straight line, right, wrong. Oh, by the way, just before I get there, people who are logical think people who are creative are dumb. Because people who are logical are in a straight line and the people who are creative are in circles. So a circling person is no good to a straight line thinker. So we've got a corporate world and a government world that is often straight line thinking, and then we get a different government or we get a different part of society that's trying to be circular. It's trying to be inclusive. And this other one is, well, you're only inclusive if you contribute to the outcome. Can you see those two pictures?
Yep.
Now, guess what, Harv? This is really simple biomechanical shit. You have those two brains in your head. They're called your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere. My first question to all my clients is, how much time do you spend in each? Are you anywhere near balancing the pendulum? Can you tell when you're in your logical brain or in your creative brain? Do you know the sensations in your body? Do you know how you're shifting and your values change? Most people don't even know what I'm talking about. They can. It's instant when they start to pay attention to themselves.
Look, this is fascinating.
Sorry,
Keith.
I'm off again. I'm getting into the box.
No. We are going back to the box. But what's really interesting, Keith, is I have watched with my wife, Kate, and her work is very logical, and they're there to get, and to see her go to work, and when she's in that mode, it's all very focused about getting the information, right?
Yeah.
And it's science based, and it's a system. And when she comes home, she'll go and ride a horse. Right? She don't want to talk to me. She wants to go and ride a horse, and she has a different personality. She rides a horse, and she's got her cats, and she got 3 cats, and that's it, only just enough cats to get her out of this fucking straight line stuff.
Yep.
Right, and that when you were saying that, that was exactly because that straight line thing, when it comes home, it's a tough gig. But the horses and the cats just zzz, everything there, you know.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So if you go, we've got duality, but most use duality in the logical mind, directional, one line, where are we? The true way of using duality is the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere together. That's the duality. What's the logical response and what's the moral response? Or what's the logical and what's the creative?
And just so to be clear, I'm sure she uses both at work.
I'm
Keith,
sure she does.
right? So I'm not saying that, but it's interesting when the straight line is prominent.
Yeah. Well, this client that you were talking about, whoever this person is, they've been trying to drive this business down a straight line.
Yep.
And they've been doing their best, and all the staff are trying to there. And then a whole bunch of playfully weirdos come in spouting the stuff that has no reality to my problems today. And in fact, they even are trying to tell me that I'm the problem and that these solutions they have will fix my problem, but they can't show me how their solution attaches to my problem. So I'm the problem, so I have to leave. Now, no one meant that, but that's how it's processed. This is the process that I'm excited about the world opening up to. And from metaphysics, Harv, we're now back to the box. The world is changing. Now, you could say spirit, source, collective consciousness. I think it's consciousness changing. Years ago, I had a visitor. Everyone's heard the story, but guy arrives in Wellington, comes past and in a meeting, talks about how we must be going bad economically. And people go, why? Well, from the airport to the town, all these people are sitting outside in doorways. And it's like, no. We're doing okay. They're out there because we've just introduced no smoking. And they're still clearing their addiction. And at that level of transition, their addiction meant they had to go outside. Now you don't see it because they've managed their addiction. The consciousness is growing. No one can really pick the point of when it went from smoking to no smoking.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah.
And it happened in a couple of steps, but it just happened. And that's evolution. Now we're in a state of evolution, and we've got to.
No, look, I remember that the smoking thing, because you go to a party, there were 2 parties. There was the inside party, and sometimes there was a bigger party going outside with all the smokers were outside, you know, and it would be over half the people outside smoking.
Yes. My father, when I got married, my first marriage, when I got married, we bought a beautiful house and we built it, and I put a lovely shag pie carpet. My dad was a smoker. He was mortified that I wouldn't let him in my house for a cigarette. This was before it became law.
Yep.
I set up a beautiful room for 2 chairs in the porch. I put a heater there. I put an ashtray. Every time he wanted a cigarette, I'd go out and be in company with him outside on the porch talking, but he was not allowed to smoke in the house. Now that's a shift in consciousness, and now it's now universal. So the world's shifting. I could talk for hours on this, but the world's shifting into a different level of consciousness. And the first consciousness is the right logical brain. Everyone's logically saying the climate's changing somehow. Let's not have a debate on it, but it seems to be changing. Now, it might be changing the way it was 100 years ago, and we're going back to it, but it's shifting.
Yep.
Just shifting. Smoking has shifted. People are now on the internet. People are on their phones. Everything's shifting.
People are choosing not to work if they don't have to.
Exactly. So there's a shifting in layers of consciousness, and that really challenges the logical mind if it's not flexible. Then you have the second mind, which is the creative mind. And so this is the challenge that are people having, that we're now getting creative answers. And you're leading this. You're saying to government, we've got a creative solution that you've never thought of because you're logical thinkers and we're creative thinkers in many ways. The third step now is hard. And this is the holy trinity of just about every religion. What are the rules? What are your perception and what are you trying to create? And how do you feel about it? And are you doing kindness towards somebody else? Or, in my thing, are you doing a kindness to yourself first? Not out of selfishness. But you cannot master your own energy if you don't clean your own energy up. You can't take the best version of you forward if you're playing out your wounds. You can't be positive if you're a negative. But if you go out and say, I'm negative because of this, someone could be creative to give you a solution that then allows you to change your state. And in a very quick circle, your state is changed. That's the wisdom and maturity that humanity is moving. But it's going to take a while because parents are going to have to stop telling their kids what to do. Because you can never see what children are going to bring to you when you're busy telling them what to do. And government's working that out. It can't tell people not to do this so well now. It doesn't work. And you Epstein, and there's so much that's uncovering because the black and white layers are becoming grey, and now people are talking into the greys, and then this is the box now. So if you take your line, and now you go three-dimensional.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the box, Keith.
Yep.
I'm going to go back to the box because I don't want to lose this. It was the most beautiful description going from 2D to 3D.
Right.
So give us what you can see. Do you remember the conversation? Fuck, I hope
No,
you do.
no, I don't.
Oh, you fucking pain in the ass.
I will, but...
Good.
yeah, but-
Okay, concentrate. When we were sitting down this morning, you were talking about the two-dimensional, you're standing in one space, how many sides of the box can you see?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God for that. Okay. Do that
Okay, so...
without telling what to do. I'm telling you what to do.
Yeah, that's right, I can cope. So basically, if I'm standing outside a box and I'm looking at a box, I can only ever see two sides. I might see a shadow somewhere, I might perceive that there's a lid or there's a depth to it, but I can only see two-dimensional. All right? If I'm inside the box, how many sides can I see?
There's more than that.
There's more than that. And what happens if I'm slightly flexible and I move?
You can see there's four sides to the
Well, I
box.
can see there's a bottom and a top.
Yeah.
Do I ever think about a bottom and a top? Let's put it this way. Do I ever think about where someone comes from and where they're trying to go as of the bottom to the top? And then do I think about the face in front of them as the one they're presenting to me? And then do I think about the one behind as all the things they want to hide unconsciously because it hurts? And so we lock ourselves in a box and present one face or two faces. So that's the first part. The second part of it, which I think a lot of people might get slightly better, because that's pretty, I get it, but what the hell does it mean? I want to go back and talk about a triangle. We talked about the straight line. Now, all a triangle is a series of straight lines connected, but it's only one more point. It just forces a whole transformation from a straight line, add one more point, and you've got a triangle. Now, if you're in that triangle and you're looking at one of those points, what's behind you is the whole line of your existence. And you're channeling it through you to that one point, to that conversation, to that person. The more threatened you are, the more you back into that line and get stuck. Lock into what you know, what's your truth, what was in the past. And that has your wounding, your stories, your fabrications, your beliefs. It has everything. And that becomes unassailable because it's your reality. Now, if someone can just help you see that you are no longer on the seesaw, you're in the middle of the triangle. There is no reality. Because you can't make any one of those points better than the other. So you are the definer of your own reality. So you have to ask different questions. Does it serve me to look at point A, or does it serve me to look at point B, or does it serve me to look at point C? Do I want to move more towards A and B but still aware of C? Do I want to move more to C and B and be aware of A Where's this other person coming from? So suddenly we become flexible and mobile in our thinking, in our behaviours, in our responses. And this is where we're moving to. And this is what's upsetting everyone, Harv. There is no baseline. So they're still trying to back into their baseline when they're asked to be standing in their empowerment, standing in their own truth. And then still being able to say, well, my truth is this, but for the community, I'm going to do that. My truth is for this, and for my business, it's best for me to do that. It serves me best to do that. And that takes away right and wrong. It takes away the lineal thinking, and it makes everything an evaluation. To does it serve me? Does it serve another? And this is where many spiritual people, they use the words, but they're not sure of the energy. But this is being of service.
Mm.
This is the statement of being in service. I'm sitting in the cornerstone of my triangle because I've got out of a straight line, right and wrong, judgments. I'm in a triangle. And for some, I've even moved into a box, which is hundreds of triangles. Because what's a box? Hundreds of triangles. And so inside that, you're sitting in the fourth dimensional reality inside the box. And there is no such thing as truth. Because truth is nothing more than the perspective from which you stand looking out.
At this moment in time.
And this moment in time. And someone can add some information, it changes your perspective. You might move a foot to the side and it changes, you can now see a shadow, and you move 2 feet and you can see another side. And this is, there's an occupational therapy term, it's called plasticity. Is our mind plastic enough to be shaped and moved? And people forget that it's not just that. And that's why I made the triangle. It's the mind. Is that plastic enough? Second part, are my emotions plastic enough? Have I done enough self-awareness, self-healing that I'm no longer angry at my mother, at men, at the police officer, at authority? Am I no longer prepared to do whatever I have to do to keep my job? You know, where are my emotional states at? And secondly is, why is my body collapsing? Because if my mind is blocked or locked and my emotions are blocked or locked, I carry all of that in the vehicle. If you turn your body to a car, you got a whole lot of shit in the boot, baby. And you've got some backseat passengers are whispering in the fucking ear. And you've got somebody sitting in the front seat that's telling you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or it's inappropriate. And so all of us have driven a car with a family in it yelling at us. And do you know where to go? So many of us give up and you fucking tell me what I should do. And then I go back to two-dimensional thinking. I will wait for the government to tell me what to do. I will wait for it to get back to normal. You will wait for this fad of this grass bacteria shit will finish up and we'll go back to the way we were. The fertilizer companies can't be wrong. I'll wait until I die to believe there might be something more to life than this physical existence. Though if I stop to think about it, I make profound statements of commitment and love to a person or to my children with no proof. There's no proof of that feeling within me, or it's just a feeling. But I call it love, and I will do remarkable things to demonstrate that, to support that, or to operate from that. So that's what's happening. Right, wrongs disappearing, government being always right disappearing, corporates being successful for money is disappearing because now they'll get hammered if they screw up the environment. You know, we've got a huge drive for community, but that's just people going for a safe haven. And so the communities are now going to be the self-awareness, self-developing tool of humanity, which they weren't necessarily in the past either. And so many people go, oh, it was great back then. It wasn't back then. You know, you got ostracised and kicked out and all those other things, and the Lord of the Manor and all that. So, but that's where we are now. We're now going to have to fumble away through this.
Keith, here's I think a lovely example that is sort of semi-tangible. The floods up in the Gisborne area, and you see all the slash that's come down off the hills, destroyed bridges on the way through, and caused all this pollution of pine along there. And now the forestry companies are wrong and bad, and the government's bad, and everything, you know. And I remember, you might remember as well, Cyclone Bowler back in the 80s, might have been somewhere around 1984 or 5 or something. It was February, and a huge cyclone comes in there and destroys all that land, and lots of farmers' lands were just ruined. And they had this wonderful response to plant it in pine trees, and it was going to make Gisborne boom. And it sort of has gone pretty good. The port's going well, and employment's going well. And then the storms happen, and people people are quite rightly, they're really cross. And then pointing the finger at this and the government and going, well, it's not just this government. I don't know who was in the government in 1984. That would have been the I don't know who was in government there. Anyway, and it's just like, oh, hang on. None of this is going to help. None of this pointing the finger is going to help. And it's going to take some compassion and love and understanding about what's it like sitting over there looking through your lens, because I don't think people had evil intentions when they planted the trees. I don't think the forestry companies had evil intentions when they harvested the trees. And there's just a whole lot of learning that's happened here. And then from that point of learning, what are we going to do? Because we could very easily do a cyclone bowler and scrap a whole lot of stuff and do something different, and that could be worse for the fucking environment than what we're doing now.
I hear you totally, Harv, and I just want to say I totally agree with you. And this is our challenge, because we go back to the right, wrong, straight line model. Now, if we sit there and say, okay, we're in a triangle, over on this point, we planted for good reasons. Over here, we've made some good things, and over here, we've got a problem with slash that we didn't realise. Okay, now before we deal with that, is climate going to be a problem? Now, I'm going to get into trouble here, possibly, but there's a report by a New Zealand researcher she got a doctorate or thesis on climate. Now, she didn't ask the question of climate change. She asked this question: how much has the sea's temperature increased? And the next question was, when you lift the temperature of water, does it carry more mass? To a degree. And she said, well, if the sea's gone higher in temperature, which it has, measurable, how much has the air gone higher in temperature where it touches the ocean? And if we've got more land that doesn't have vegetation on it, how much more heat does that bounce up into the atmosphere? So if the atmosphere is getting hotter, not because the ice caps are melting, let's not go in that, just because we've measured the sea and we've measured the air. She worked out a whole range of calculus that showed that the air carries a lot more moisture when it's warmer. So the lower stratospheres from the sea to the upper stratosphere carries more moisture. So the clouds are denser with moisture until they hit the cold layer, as they will do. But they have more water. So her summary was this: we will have 100-year floods every 5 years. And we have droughts in between. And if you look at most of it, we have droughts in between and we're having more flooding. Why? Because of this change in temperature between the sea and the air. And so therefore there's more moisture out of the sea, water going into the air that's got more volume. And then because it's got more volume, it holds more until it's cold. So it doesn't just trickle, it downpours. Now, if it's been sucking up all the moisture out of the sea and the land, Manawatu had great droughts. If they suck the moisture out half, it goes into the atmosphere, that land dies a bit. It doesn't have grass cover. It doesn't have the same bush. So when all that water comes down in a great amount, it can't handle it. And so it runs off. So let's not talk about climate change as basic. We're just saying in this moment of time, the sea is warmer, the air is warmer. This is what's happening to the amount of water in the air. And it's happening in New Zealand. She measured it in New Zealand. And if you watch it, we're having it. And that's why we're having 100-year floods quite frequently. So opens another question. It's not about the trees, is it?
And it's interesting, Keith, because the different subject, but it's around creating environments that are more resourceful, more biodiversity, all that sort of stuff. But that's a
and that's why I think we have to get out of this straight line, because then you're going to make it wrong.
yeah.
Now, the simple thing is there was no commercial value in taking the slash off the hillside. So it got left there because it was a commercial decision. Now it's an environmental decision. So now the environmental values are going to push up the slash value. So now people are going to have to take the slash off, which is going to flow through to the timber, which might mean that we don't have as much timber, or that's a flow-on effect. And I really want to emphasise this. That is how life grows. That's how we grow. And when we're in logical or emotive spiralling, we only have one outcome. And we have to make lots of little shifts in lots of little areas. All right? And if the man that we talked about who's leaving, if he could be told that, take all of this and park it. And just take the one thing that worked for you today and talk about implementing that. And take one little piece at a time. He will co-create the information given with the existing organisation, allowing himself and others to move. And the consultants might be going, oh, this is too fucking slow. But when they leave, he'll still be there. But now they're going, oh, here it all is. We're now going to change the whole environmental structure of this company. So they've just done a slash and burn.
Just going back to, I'm just thinking about the situation in Gizmo. I just want to finish that conversation.
Okay, cool.
Because Cyclone Bowler, they made one big change to Cyclone Bowler. They made one big change. And they planted pine trees on a whole lot of highly erodible land.
Yes.
So they had one policy for that cyclone.
Not a variety. Now, watch this. They also made the solution from a commercial reality.
Yep.
Short-term thinking.
Yep.
There's a huge value in New Zealand natives because there's a scarcity factor.
Yep.
It could have been a really good solution to have planted some of that, so that alongside the forestry providing the commercial, we had a longer term growth rate, so that our harvesting was more progressive. All right, and therefore we could put more back into pasture in a progressive, and that's okay. But you can't go back and say they were wrong. They did the best they could at the time, and we've got to celebrate that and go, wow, this is good. It's led us to here. What's next, and how can we listen to more people? All right, for more ideas before we decide on the course of action. And it's that slowing down that I talked about right at the beginning of this. And our commercial model doesn't allow that. All right? And neither do us. If I said to you, Harv, let's go and play a game of golf, hopefully you'd say yes. And we get to the golf course. And I go, oh, fuck, it's beautiful. Sorry. Oh, gosh, isn't it beautiful here? And we started this conversation. We sat down under a tree and we pulled out our water bottles and our sandwiches and we chatted away merrily and we solved all the problems of the world and we touched on our relationships and our vulnerability in our business, and we had a podcast like this happening under the trees. And then we looked at each other and said, well, I came to golf to hit a ball so I could measure my success by how many times I had to hit it to put it in a hole. That was the scope of my importance. And added to that was some exercise and some companionship. Now, if I stop in this moment, I haven't hit a golf ball yet. How do I feel? You might have the same pleasure. You might go, well, that was great, but I haven't had my exercise. You go, great, well, off you go, walk around the golf course really fast, get your exercise. But it would be a different reality. And I would lay a small investment of money and time that when you went home, your wife would notice the difference. Because how many golfers go home unhappy with their game?
So one of the things I've loved about today, Keith, is we caught up this morning for coffee. Then we went to the field days, and we had the most just wonderful experience going through the gate, and had raucous laughter and so forth. And you want to do something, and then you left, and I totted on. But we organising a podcast for me, takes time, and to organise and plan it and all that sort of stuff. And this morning, spontaneously, I said, Keith, let's get this conversation down and get it recorded. And so the thing that I've found real joy in today is that spontaneously we said, let's do this. And you were going to head away today. And you changed your plans for this, and I've changed my plans for this. You made more of a change than I did. And we've made this happen. And what's the point? I think being spontaneous and just going, can we do this? Should we do something different today? I think that's something that I know when I do that, I feel better. Yeah.
And half that is, to me, the truth or the proof of what I'm suggesting. When we allow our inner world, our unconscious inner world, to come out and we look at it, changes our reality. And it makes us more present. It influences our choices a little. You still went to the thing, I still went to the thing. We might move tonight. I will make that decision when I leave.
Yep.
But at the same time, we created a space, and our world doesn't value creating space because it's outcome focused, and a space is a void that must be filled if you're outcome focused. And most of us fill the void. I'm going to get very poetic here. Most of us are falling apart at the moment because the void that we've always had is showing up. The relationships in which we're unhappy.
So just say that again, Keith, because I'm just looking, just to make sure that beautiful thing doesn't get lost. So please say that again.
What is happening is, as our external reference point that we've held as security, I am this, I am that, is dropping away. The void that's inside ourselves, the emptiness, is coming up to be seen. And that's why we won't stop. We have to find something else to focus on, because if we allow that void up, we have to talk to our wife. We have to be vulnerable. We have to talk to ourselves and be vulnerable. We have to talk to our colleagues and be vulnerable. We have to say, I don't know where the world's going. We have to say, I'm not in charge. I can't influence it anymore. I used to be able to be good at that, but I can't be. So the void in the human soul, the void in the human heart is starting to be exposed. And people are not living joyful lives, doing work that they love. Some are, but many aren't. And so that's showing up now. And my career's gone, my job's gone. Sorry, Harv, I'm off onto a tangent.
It's still relevant, Keith, because the outcome piece is the piece that I'm struggling with at the moment.
Yes.
And we talked about this morning.
Yes.
And the fashion. I was just reflecting when you were saying that, because right now, Michelle, who runs the business, is fabulous at doing that, and Marg, our chair, have decided not to do a budget at the moment for the next financial year.
Yep.
And I'm going, we've got to have a budget. And they go, there's too many variables at the moment. There's no point wasting time on doing a budget right now. because we've got so many things in play yet, and we need those to settle down and actually see what's, because it's just going to be a waste of time. And I've gone, yeah, okay, but actually I don't agree with them. And I'm sitting there going, no, we need clarity, we need this, we can change. And that's my outcome thing,
Yes, it is.
in play. And these two mature women are going, no, well, let's just see how things pan out for the next month and so forth. And it's fucking cooked my head.
Yeah, yeah. Because they're saying to you a different thing. They're saying to you, Harv, trust us, we know about budgeting. Trust us, we've lived by budgets. Trust us, we will be cautious with the money. Trust us, we don't need you to measure the money spent. We will measure it by the values that we are running into the business. So you will be pleasantly surprised at the end of the month, because they will take a greater care of your money than if you had a budget. And that's what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, Keith, is seeing, and that's why I thoroughly enjoyed the session this morning, and I was reminded of my good mate Rod McDonald, who is in my collective intelligence team, when he often says, "Oh fuck, it's me again, is it?" Right, and it's just and that was me this morning after coffee, going, God, it's me again. That was, and it's really interesting because I know the more outcome focused I get, and the tighter I get, nothing goes better.
No.
Nothing goes better.
No. One of the really key things is I had a plumber working on my flats doing some plumbing work. And I was so frustrated the first time he came, because he arrived at 9 because he went to the merchants earlier to get materials. He stopped at 10 for coffee. And he's sitting outside in the sun. He's only been on the job an hour.
What a useless prick.
And he was busy doing his coffee, and he's got his thermos and his little thing. And then half an hour later he's back. And at 12 he stopped again. And I'm thinking, gets out his sandwich maker and plugs it in and does his toasted sandwiches. And I'm thinking, crikey, at 3 o'clock it's happening again. He's going to leave at 4. And after 3 days of this, I'm biting my tongue. And, I finally said to him, hey, he said, I'll be watching you. I said, yeah, I've been having great difficulty with it. He said, you're right. He said, but the difference is, Keith, you're looking at it from your head. I'm looking at it from my energy levels. I've been doing this for 50 years. I know that if I don't stop, I screw it up. I cut it too short, I cut it too long, I tighten it, I untighten it, I have to go back for a leak. I know that. I also know that tonight, for my own peace of mind, I'm going out cycling with a bunch of young teenagers up a mountain. So I'm not going to exhaust myself on your job by not taking breaks and then not have my enjoyment in the evening, because then my wife gets frustrated because I'm grumpy. So Keith, I'm going to bill you for the hours that I'm working. I'm going to get the job done. If we're running out of time, I'll speed up a bit, but I'm monitoring that. Just shut the fuck up and sit in the sun, and I'll sort it out for you. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we lived life like that more?
Yeah.
And that's out of our mind into our beingness, because he talked about his relationship, he talked about his personal satisfaction, he talked about his body not being as strong as he got older, he talked about the wisdom of knowing what he was doing. He said, sometimes, Keith, I'm sitting there working out the best way to do your job while I'm having my cup of tea, because I've uncovered it now, and now I'm looking, if I do that, I'm going to fix it, but maybe if I reroute that, I'll give you a better job. And all that's not there if you're sitting breathing at me. And so, Harv, that's really the sum total of what I'm trying to suggest. We are reaching a phase in humanity's consciousness where we have to sharpen our internal saw. We have to spend more time inside, so we're more conscious of what we deliver outside. And we must start looking at what we're creating rather than looking behind at what's gone wrong. Because if you turn around and look behind, you just back into all the shit you carry. Now, I'm not talking about positive thinking. I'm talking about looking forward, not so much on a goal, but on an intent. We intend to build your business half without spending too much money. We don't need a budget. We know what we're doing. When we start to live like that half, the world will change.
Mm.
There's a little thing I just want to touch. It keeps on popping into my head, and I've been telling you I'm spontaneous and I listen to what's
Here we
popping
go.
into my head. So here's this popping in. I have a very, very powerful memory of COVID when everyone went into lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really powerful for me because my partner had cancer at the time, and we were outside the medical model, and I had to leave her in the car park of the hospital. So lockdown was she passed. Lockdown was a very powerful time for me, and I have a lot of reasons that I could be snotty about it if I wanted to. But my lasting memory was all the photos that people were posting of the family going for a walk in the evening or in the day because they've got kids at home, there's nothing to do, they're all bored. But that picture was not of the people. It was of the proud, confident, alive dog that was walking in front of the family with its tail up, prancing in joy because its family was home. And he's normally or she's normally left in a kennel or left in the house. And while we're all struggling with lockdown, the dog was in its magnificence, its tribe, its pack, whatever you call it, was there. It was out the front, tail up, happy, alive. The kids were laughing. What a transformation that happened in that way when everything else was taken away.
Mm.
So you can focus on what was taken away, or you can focus on what was showing up. My invitation to everyone, all your listeners, is start focusing on what's showing up inside you, whether it's a positive or a negative, it's an uplifting or a contraction, what's happening to your energy, what is the thought, the story, the emotion that's attached to it, what are your skills to reframe it, call someone, grab it quickly, call me, do whatever, change the state. Don't try and unpack it too much, change the state and you'll find you'll move forward faster and quicker. And that's how you're going to have to navigate moment by moment, not by rules, not what we did in the past, not what's expected, not what the government's told us. You can't even go to the supermarket today and expect to get the food that you used to get. So there is no new normal. We all have to become aware of our normal. Our normal.
Keith, I'm going to wrap up our conversation soon because I think this is just a beautiful, I don't know how to say it, focus or coming together of this podcast, because I think you've just encapsulated what I want, what I was hoping for from this conversation.
Yeah.
Mm. Keith, thank you for all of your guidance and help for me and in my life.
Pleasure.
And I know you have worked with hundreds of other people and made a huge impact with them. And we will drop your information in the podcast link so people can find you and hopefully work with more people. But Keith, from myself and from many others, thank you for doing your work that you love and you're so good at and making the world a better place.
My pleasure. Absolutely and utterly. If you're going to do anything, why not this?
Thanks for listening in. We're Collective Intelligence, a one-of-a-kind people ecosystem that takes inspiration from Mother Nature. To find out how we reimagine leadership development, visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz.